Well, it's EF Press here in a secret location. One of the last bits of common land owned by the people left in London. Recent events have highlighted how the British police react during a so-called terrorist incident recently in and around London Bridge, across the Thames of London. There was an event in one of the buildings for the rehabilitation of prisoners, and unfortunately one of them turned out to be a gentleman called Usman Khan, recently released from serving a long sentence for plotting other terrorist outrages and using intelligence and legitimate data gathering. He was prevented in the past from committing such acts. From the witnesses that described a man who pulled out 2 knives and proceeded to slaughter innocent fellow attendees and staff, killing 2, but he was apprehended in the street, having been confronted and chased down by members of the group and members of the public, and was restrained on the pavement of the bridge. At that point, the police, the armed police, pulled the members of the public away from him and shot him dead. And the reaction of the press and the British public so far is to applaud this and to say that he had it coming and that they had no choice but to shoot him. While the history of the London anti-terrorist police and armed police when it comes to terrorist suspects being shot dead is not a good one. And head of an operation, Cressida in 2005, they gunned down Jean-Charles de Menezes, and turned out he was an innocent Brazilian electrician or building worker. And their excuse was that he'd been misidentified as a different suspect, and the fact he had a backpack and was running from police led them to believe that he was in danger of an imminent terrorist attack. This mistaken belief, Cressida tells us, has haunted her through her career, but has not been an impediment for her being promoted to Chief of the Metropolitan Police. And if we fast forward 14 years to London Bridge and a dead body of Usman Khan laying there, having been shot, and the reports from witnesses said that at the time he was subdued. However, they then claimed, and this is the police's claim, not the witnesses', that they saw a flash of something that looked like a suicide vest. And in those circumstances, they had no choice but to terminate him, extinguishing his life. However, it turns out, in their own words, they claimed that this vest was a fake. That's what they say. Not a real vest, but a fake vest. And a fake vest looks exactly like the real thing, but does not contain the explosives. Have we seen any evidence of this fake vest? Any pictures, photos? Normally after such an incident, especially when the suspect's been arrested and not killed, they hold up the weapons, the knives, the vests, etc., as evidence that this person was up to no good. And we have not seen any evidence so far. And whether they produce a vest and say that this was the vest he was wearing might occur at some point. They will claim that such evidence and things will come out at the coroner's inquiry, where such evidence has to be presented and a cause of death has to be ruled. And in the police's favour would be justifiable homicide, preventing an act of further terrorism and outrage, where they believed that this Usman Khan was on the point of detonating this imaginary, I believe, suicide vest. Now, EF Press would never condone any terrorist act or any death, especially one that results from the police or the military. And when the police or the military kill someone, they have to justify it. They are trying to, desperately, with this so-called vest story, and we shall see what the witnesses come up with, because those who held him off in the building and those who pursued him down the street know better, I believe, than the police of what he actually was wearing. And with close contact with some crazed knifeman, I think one would know if they were wearing a suicide vest, especially as the police will claim he had it concealed. And seeing a flash of a suicide vest, even an imaginary one, in their minds is justification for murder. And EF Press, unlike most of the British public and all of the media, doesn't believe that shooting people, whatever their offences, if they no longer represent a threat at that moment in time, is not justifiable. I've had some very good comments online about the police in relation to Julian Assange and the tens of millions of pounds they have spent watching him and arresting him and incarcerating him. But the costs that Cressida Dick complained about were about policing the ER rebellion, and no mention of Julian, no mention of this imaginary vest so far. We shall update, we shall look for the evidence, and whatever they produce, unfortunately for them, I'll have a very sceptical view of what they come up with. Because if there was any such vest, they would have had that on the front page of The Sun, and that would have been the headline in The Guardian. The vest is an essential piece of evidence we will never get to see. EF Press.